The real Forrest Gump. The howitzer is burning. Private First Class Sammy Davis lies in a foxhole, stunned. An enemy recoilless rifle round just hit his artillery piece. The explosion threw him sideways. Killed or wounded most of his gun crew. Left the howitzer blazing. He can't feel his legs properly. Something is wrong with his back. Pain radiates through his body. Above him, the night sky is alive with tracers. Mortar, rounds falling. 1,500 Viet Cong soldiers charging Firebase Cudgel, driven to within 25 meters of the American positions. Only a river separates them, a narrow ribbon of water, the last barrier between Davis and an enemy battalion determined to overrun his position and kill every American. His sergeant is screaming at him, "Stay down! Take cover! The howitzer is gone. No point getting killed for a burning gun." Davis ignores him. He struggles to his feet, staggers toward the burning howitzer. His back is broken. He doesn't know it yet, won't know for weeks. All he knows is his gun crew is down. The enemy is coming, and that howitzer is the only thing that can stop them. He rams a beehive shell into the burning gun, aims point blank at the Viet Cong, advancing 5 deep, fires. The recoil knocks him violently to the ground. Again, this is the story of the real Forrest Gump, the artilleryman who fired a burning howitzer with a broken back, who crossed a river he couldn't swim to save 3 wounded soldiers, who fought for 2 hours straight despite injuries that should have killed him, and who had his head digitally replaced with Tom Hanks in one of the most famous movies ever made. Sammy Lee Davis was born on November 1st, 1946, in Dayton, Ohio, into a military family. His grandfather served in the Spanish-American War. His father, Robert, was in World War II, an artilleryman. His brothers, Hubert and Darrell, served in Korea and Vietnam. Service was expected, understood, part of the family identity. The family moved constantly because of Robert's work. They settled mostly outside Stockton, California, in a small community called French Camp. Sammy attended Manteca High School, played football, joined the diving team, participated in Sea Scouting. During his senior year, the family moved to Indiana. Sammy finished high school at Mooresville High School, graduated in 1966. He faced the choice every young man faced in 1966: college, work, or service. Davis walked into a recruiting station intending to join the Marine Corps. That's where his family heroes had served. That's what he respected most. The line wasn't moving. Davis had to get to work. He couldn't wait. He turned around, walked to the Army recruiter, enlisted on the spot. Those people in my family that were in the Marine Corps were the ones I had the most respect for, Davis later said. No matter the shade of green or the pattern of his camouflage, though, it was the brotherhood which drove him. The Army sent Davis to basic training, then artillery school. His father had been an artilleryman. Davis volunteered for the same, wanted to follow in those footsteps, honor that tradition. He became a cannoneer, assigned to Battery C, 2nd Battalion, 4th Artillery, 9th Infantry Division. The 105mm howitzer, a massive weapon, devastating firepower, the backbone of American artillery in Vietnam. In March 1967, Davis deployed to South Vietnam. 20 years old, private first class, ready to do his part, ready to serve. By November 1967, the enemy had extended the Ho Chi Minh Trail south from North Vietnam through Cambodia and Laos. They were attempting to enter far South Vietnam along the Mekong Delta, a vast maze of rivers, swamps, and islands surrounded by rice paddies. Davis's battalion was charged with finding enemy units hiding in the area, interdicting their supply lines, disrupting their operations. On November 18, 1967, Battery C was helicoptered into Firebase Cudgel, a remote support base, a reed-filled plain with little islands toward its middle. 11 guns, 42 men, a forward-fire support base for American infantrymen operating in the area. They arrived and set up, dug in, prepared defensive positions, standard procedure. Another day in Vietnam. Around 2 in the morning, everything changed. The first mortar rounds hit at approximately 0200 hours. Heavy enemy mortar attack. Then 1,500 Viet Cong soldiers from the 261st Main Force Battalion launched a fierce ground assault. They swarmed from the south, then from the west, pushing close, driving to within 25 meters of American positions. Only a small river about 35 meters wide separated the enemy from the firebase. Davis's squad was operating their 105mm howitzer, the gun that fired 18,000 beehive darts in each shell, anti-personnel rounds, devastating against infantry at close range. When Davis saw how close the enemy had come, he seized a machine gun, started providing covering fire for his gun crew, trying to give them time to bring direct artillery fire on the enemy. The Viet Cong had other plans. An enemy recoilless rifle round scored a direct hit on the howitzer. The explosion was catastrophic. The powder charges stowed nearby detonated. The blast wounded the entire gun crew, threw Davis sideways into a foxhole, broke his back. The third lumbar vertebra fractured. He lay there unconscious. Sometime before dawn, while still unconscious, he was seriously wounded again, in the back and buttocks, by beehive darts from an American weapon. Friendly fire. Someone fired a beehive round, and the darts hit Davis in the foxhole. When he regained consciousness, the firebase was chaos. Tracers everywhere, mortars falling, the enemy charging, his gun crew scattered or dead, the howitzer burning. His sergeant was shouting at him, "Stay down, take cover, you'll get killed." Davis looked at the burning howitzer, looked at the advancing Viet Cong, made his decision. He was convinced the heavily outnumbered Americans couldn't survive the attack, so he decided to fire off at least one round from the damaged artillery piece before being overrun. Go down fighting, take as many with him as possible. He struggled to his feet, his back screamed. His legs barely worked. Blood ran down his body from multiple wounds. He didn't care. He staggered to the howitzer, burning furiously, grabbed a beehive shell, rammed it into the gun, aimed point blank at the Viet Cong, advancing 5 deep, directly in front of the weapon. Fired. The beehive round cut them down. 18,000 darts. A wall of death. The enemy wave faltered, stopped, fell back momentarily. The howitzer rolled backward from the recoil, unsecured, unbraced. The kickback knocked Davis violently to the ground, broke more ribs, added to his injuries. He got up, returned to the weapon, loaded another shell, fired, got knocked down again. An enemy mortar round exploded within 20 meters of his position. More shrapnel, more wounds, more pain. Davis got up, loaded, fired, knocked down by recoil. He did this 5 times total. 5 beehive rounds. 5 times knocked to the ground by the recoil, 5 times getting back up, loading, firing, until the howitzer was out of ammunition. The Viet Cong assault on his section of the perimeter was broken, bodies stacked in front of his position. The enemy pulled back, regrouped, prepared for another assault. Davis stood at his burning howitzer, bleeding, broken, wondering what came next. Then he heard yelling from across the river. American soldiers, cut off on the far side, wounded, trapped. The Viet Cong were closing in on them. Davis heard them calling for help, saw one waving his arms. 3 men, maybe more, unable to cross, unable to escape, about to be killed or captured. He made another impossible decision. Despite his extensive injuries, despite his inability to swim, despite the enemy fire, despite the river, Davis was going to get them. He grabbed an air mattress from the American camp, the kind soldiers slept on, inflatable, buoyant, his only chance. He got in the water, started paddling across. His back was broken. His body was riddled with shrapnel and beehive darts. He couldn't swim. The river was deep. Enemy soldiers were on both banks, firing. "When I seen my brothers across the river," Davis later said, "I knew I had to do for them what I knew in my heart they would do for me. So I did. I went across the river and got them. God gave me the strength to go across that river and get my brothers here and bring them back." Davis reached the far bank, scrambled up, found 3 wounded soldiers. One had a head wound that looked fatal, brain matter visible, barely conscious. Davis gave them all morphine, started firing his rifle into the brush, into the darkness, providing covering fire, buying time. Another American, Private First Class William Murray, followed Davis across the river. Together they got the most gravely wounded soldier back across. Others pulled him to safety on the American side. Davis went back for the other 2 wounded soldiers, pulled them onto the air mattress, started paddling back across the river, through enemy fire, through a river he couldn't swim, dragging 2 wounded men on an air mattress. He made it, got all 3 wounded soldiers back to the firebase, back to the aid station, back to safety. Then Davis made his way to another American howitzer crew, joined them, resumed the fight, kept firing for nearly 2 more hours until the Viet Cong assault subsided. 7 Americans died that night. 98 were wounded. Half of the 44 artillerymen, including Davis, were casualties. The Viet Cong took most of their dead with them. American commanders estimated they killed at least 150 enemy soldiers, maybe more. Davis was evacuated. Eventually, after the fight ended, after the wounded were stabilized, after someone noticed he could barely move, Davis woke up in a hospital. His back was broken. His ribs were crushed. He was shot multiple times by beehive darts. 1 AK-47 bullet in his leg, multiple shrapnel wounds, burns, concussion. The cumulative damage was staggering. The doctors told him he was going home, medical discharge. Too many injuries, too much damage. His war was over. Davis refused. He petitioned General William Westmoreland personally, asked to be allowed to stay with his unit, with his brothers, with the men he'd fought beside. Westmoreland granted permission. Davis was so hobbled by his wounds that he couldn't return to his gun crew, so they made him a cook. For 3 months, Davis cooked for Battery C, served meals, did what he could, stayed with his unit, stayed in Vietnam, because that's where his brothers were. That's where he belonged. In December 1967, he was finally sent back to the United States, against his wishes. But orders were orders. While recovering, Davis learned that all of the men who survived the fight with him had recommended him for the Medal of Honor. Every single one. They'd witnessed what he did. The howitzer, the river, the rescue, the 2 more hours of fighting after injuries that should have killed him. On November 19th, 1968, exactly 1 year and 1 day after the night-long firefight at Kai Lei, Sergeant Sammy Lee Davis received the Medal of Honor from President Lyndon Johnson at the White House. 4 other soldiers received the medal that day: Specialist 5th Class Dwight Johnson, Captain Angelo Liticki, Specialist 4th Class Gary Wetzel, Captain James Taylor. Anyone who saw footage of the Medal of Honor ceremony might recognize it, because that footage was used in Forrest Gump, the Academy Award-winning movie. The scene where Forrest receives his Medal of Honor, where President Johnson says congratulations and shakes his hand. That's real footage from Davis's ceremony. They digitally replaced Davis's head with Tom Hanks. Sammy Davis became known as the real Forrest Gump, the soldier whose heroism inspired the movie, whose ceremony was immortalized on screen, whose story became legend. Davis married Peggy Jo Martin in December 1968, a woman he met while home on leave from Vietnam. They had children, built a life. Decades later, after Peggy passed away, Davis married Dixie, his Dixie chick, he calls her. They live in a small Indiana town near Freedom, a quiet life, simple pleasures. Davis estimates they're on the road 200 days a year, attending veterans events, speaking at schools, signing his memoir, You Don't Lose Till You Quit, trying lessons on adversity and victory from a Vietnam veteran and Medal of Honor recipient. The other 165 days, they're home, where Davis can be found mowing the yard barefoot, watching Gunsmoke reruns with Dixie, playing with their cat, cheekily named Big Booty Judy, living the life of a regular country boy from the Midwest. But the war never leaves. Davis still deals with the after effects of Agent Orange exposure, neurology appointments, medical issues, the permanent reminders of Vietnam. My back was broke, Davis said in a recent interview. My ribs were crushed. I was shot multiple times by beehive darts, and had one AK-47 rifle bullet in my leg. He's lucky to be walking, much less running around like Forrest Gump, the galloping movie character loosely based on his heroism. Davis has attended every presidential inauguration since Richard Nixon. He stops at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., pauses before the names of 58,318 fallen brothers and sisters. In 2018, Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb presented Davis with the Sachem Award, the state's highest civilian honor, during a ceremony at the Indiana War Memorial. Sammy has dedicated his life since Vietnam to healing the wounds, both mental and physical, of that time. Holcomb said, "Time and again, he has proven he will go anywhere and do anything for his brothers in uniform." Davis's name appears twice inside the Indiana State House, once among Hoosier Medal of Honor recipients, again among Sachem Award honorees. A highway sign in Owen County proudly welcomes travelers, the hometown of Medal of Honor recipient Sammy Lee Davis. Despite the national spotlight, Davis remains rooted, humble, a farm boy from the Midwest who did what needed doing, who crossed a river he couldn't swim, who fired a burning howitzer with a broken back, who refused to go home when the doctors said his war was over. The story of Sammy Davis is about brotherhood, about refusing to leave your brothers behind, about doing for them what you know in your heart they would do for you. Davis didn't think about medals on November 18th, 1967, didn't think about heroism or recognition or movies. He thought about the Viet Cong charging his position, about the gun crew scattered around him, about the Americans trapped across the river. He thought about what needed to be done, then he did it. 5 times loading and firing a burning howitzer despite broken bones and multiple wounds. 5 times getting knocked down by recoil. 5 times getting back up, crossing a river he couldn't swim, on an air mattress, through enemy fire, with a broken back and shrapnel throughout his body, making 2 trips, bringing back 3 wounded soldiers, refusing to leave them, fighting for 2 more hours after injuries that should have killed him, after rescues that should have been impossible, after displaying courage that defied comprehension. That's Sammy Davis. That's the real Forrest Gump, not the fictional character, not the Hollywood version, but the actual soldier who inspired the story. The kid from Ohio who enlisted in the army because the Marine Corps line wasn't moving fast enough, who volunteered for artillery because his father had been an artilleryman, who went to Vietnam at 20 years old and fought like hell to bring his brothers home. When I see my brothers across the river, I knew I had to do for them what I knew in my heart they would do for me. That's the code. That's the standard. That's what separates those who wear the Medal of Honor from everyone else. Not superhuman ability, not fearlessness, but the decision to act when action means probable death, to cross when crossing seems impossible, to keep fighting when fighting should be finished. Sammy Davis made those decisions, lived those principles, earned that medal, then spent the next 56 years honoring it, speaking, teaching, showing young people what courage looks like, what sacrifice means, what brotherhood requires. All in all, Governor Holcomb said, not bad for a farm boy from the Midwest. Not bad at all. 78 years old now, still walking barefoot around his house, still watching gun smoke with Dixie, still attending inaugurations, still stopping at the wall, still remembering November 18th, 1967, the night Firebase Cudgel was attacked, the night he fired a burning howitzer with a broken back, the night he crossed a river he couldn't swim, the night he became the real Forrest Gump. That's Sammy Lee Davis, Sergeant First Class, Medal of Honor recipient, the soldier who refused to quit, who refused to leave his brothers behind, who refused to accept that some things were impossible. 5 times knocked down, 5 times got back up, 3 soldiers saved, 2 hours more fighting, 1 broken back, 1 Medal of Honor, 1 hell of a story. The real Forrest Gump, not fiction, not Hollywood, real. That's Sammy Davis.